Dante Moretti's name alone could make grown men go pale. He controlled streets, businesses, and secrets that could ruin powerful people with a single phone call. Everyone in the city knew not to cross him. But inside his own mansion behind the tall iron gates, there was a different kind of fear. Not fear of him. Fear for his two little daughters. His wife Maria had died almost 2 years earlier, leaving behind twin 4-year-old girls who cried themselves to sleep most nights. Dante hired nanny after nanny to help raise them, paying more money than most people saw in a year. Never mattered. Every single one of them quit before the sun rose the next day. Some said the house felt too cold, too silent, too heavy with grief. Some said the twins screamed and sobbed and could not be comforted no matter what they tried. Some simply took one look at Dante Moretti's dark, tired eyes and packed their bags without a word of goodbye. Not one nanny had ever lasted more than 24 hours in that house. The twins stopped believing anyone would ever stay. And Dante, the man everyone feared, had begun to believe it too. Before we continue, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me where you're watching from. Now here's how it all began. ***. Isabella's hands were shaking as the taxi pulled up to the mansion gates. She had never seen a house this large in her entire life. Tall stone walls, iron gates twice her height, and a driveway that seemed to stretch on forever. She took a deep breath, gripped the handle of her small suitcase and stepped out. A guard at the gate looked her over carefully before speaking into a small radio. A moment later, the gates opened and an older man in a neat black suit came walking briskly down the path to meet her. "You have exactly 24 hours, said Mr. Reynolds, the old butler, as he walked fast down the long hallway once they were inside. "That is how long every nanny before you has lasted in this house. Not 1 day more." Isabella almost laughed, but she stopped herself. "Why? Are the children that bad?" "The children are not bad," Mr. Reynolds said, slowing down. "The children are sad. There is a difference. And sad children can be harder than bad ones." He stopped in front of 2 big wooden doors and knocked softly. "Miss Luna. Miss Rosa. Someone is here to meet you." No answer came from inside. Mr. Reynolds sighed and opened the door anyway. Inside, 2 4-year-old twin girls sat on the floor, surrounded by broken toys. One had thrown a stuffed rabbit across the room. The other was crying quietly, hugging her knees. "This is Miss Isabella," Mr. Reynolds said gently. "She is going to take care of you now." Luna, the one who had thrown the rabbit, looked up with cold eyes. "No, she's not. She'll leave too." They all leave. Isabella walked into the room slowly. She did not rush to hug them or force a smile. She simply sat down on the floor right where she was in her nice interview clothes, and picked up the stuffed rabbit that had been thrown. "This rabbit looks lonely," she said softly. "Does he have a name?" Rosa, the quiet one, wiped her eyes and whispered, "Buttons." "Buttons," Isabella repeated with a small smile. "That's a good name. I think Buttons is hungry." "Are you too hungry?" Luna crossed her small arms. "Are you going to leave like the others?" Isabella looked at her and something in her chest ached. She thought of her own mother who used to hold her when she cried, who was no longer there to hold her now. "I don't know what tomorrow will bring," Isabella said honestly. "But I am here today. And today I would like to make you something warm to eat. Would you like that?" The twins looked at each other. Neither one said yes. But neither one said no either. Mr. Reynolds, watching from the door, felt something he had not felt in a long time inside that cold house. Hope. Isabella had not always dreamed of working as a nanny in a stranger's mansion. 6 months earlier she had been standing in the kitchen of her parents' small restaurant, flour on her hands, tears in her eyes, staring at a stack of unpaid bills. Bella's kitchen had been her parents' pride. Her father had built the tables with his own hands. Her mother had painted the walls a warm yellow, the color of sunshine, because she said food should be eaten somewhere happy. But then her parents died in a car accident on a rainy night, and the restaurant without them began to fall apart. Isabella tried. She really did. She worked 18-hour days, cooked every recipe her mother had ever taught her, smiled at every customer even when her heart was breaking. It was not enough. The bank sent letter after letter. The debt grew larger every month. One evening, sitting alone in the empty restaurant after closing, Isabella put her head down on the counter and cried until she had no tears left. "I promise," she whispered to the empty room, to her parents who could no longer hear her, "I will never give up. I will find a way to save this place. I don't care what I have to do. The next morning she saw an advertisement in the newspaper. Asterisk nanny wanted. 2 young children. Live-in position. High pay. 2-year contract. Must be patient, kind and willing to stay no matter what. Asterisk. The pay listed was enough to save the restaurant. More than enough if she saved carefully for 2 years. She did not know when she circled that advertisement with a shaking hand that the man behind it was Dante Moretti, a name that made grown men go pale when they heard it. She did not know that his home had swallowed nanny after nanny, spitting each one out within a single day. She only knew she needed the money. And she was not afraid of hard work. She had no idea how much her life was about to change. Dante Moretti sat behind his large desk, staring at a photograph that never left its place beside his lamp. In the photograph, a beautiful woman with dark hair laughed while holding 2 baby girls, one in each arm. Maria. It had been almost 2 years since she died, giving birth to complications no one could have predicted. 2 years since the mansion had gone quiet. 2 years since Dante had smiled a real smile. He ran a world that other men feared. He controlled streets, businesses, and secrets that could destroy powerful people. But in his own home with his own daughters he felt like the weakest man alive. He did not know how to comfort crying children. He did not know how to braid hair or read bedtime stories the way Maria used to. He hired the best nannies money could buy, and every single one of them left within a day, unable to handle the twins' grief, or unable to handle the coldness of the house, or simply too afraid of him. Mr. Reynolds knocked and entered. "The new nanny has arrived, sir. Miss Isabella Rossi." Dante did not look up from the photograph. "How long do you give her?" "I don't know, sir," Mr. Reynolds said carefully. "But something about her feels different." Dante finally looked up, his dark eyes tired. "They all feel different at first. Give her 24 hours, Reynolds. That's my honest guess." He was wrong. But it would take time for him to see it. By the end of her first week, Isabella had not left. She had learned that Luna liked to be the strong one, always testing, always pushing to see who would break first. She had learned that Rosa was the gentle one, who cried at night when she thought no one could hear, missing a mother she barely remembered. Isabella cooked for them every day. Not fancy food, just warm, simple meals, the kind her own mother used to make. Soft pancakes shaped like stars. Chicken soup with tiny pasta shapes. Cookies that filled the whole kitchen with a sweet smell. "Why do you cook so much?" Luna asked one afternoon, sitting on the kitchen counter watching Isabella stir a pot of soup. "Because food is love," Isabella answered simply. "My mother used to say that when you cook for someone with your whole heart they can taste it. Even if they don't know why, the food makes them feel warm inside." Luna was quiet for a moment. "Our old nannies never cooked. They just watched TV shows on their phones." "Well," Isabella said, smiling, "I am not like your old nannies." "You better not leave," Luna said quickly, then looked embarrassed that she had said it out loud. Isabella knelt down so she was eye level with the little girl. "I signed a contract for 2 years, Luna. I will be here for 2 years. I promise you that." She did not know at that moment how hard that promise would be to keep. Dante watched from a distance for the first month. He did not interfere. He simply observed, the way he observed everything in his life, carefully, quietly, always looking for weakness or danger. He saw Isabella dance with his daughters in the living room to silly songs. He saw her patiently teach Rosa how to tie her shoes, praising her even when she failed 10 times before getting it right. He saw her sit with Luna during a thunderstorm, holding her hand and telling her that thunder was just the sky clearing its throat. He had never seen his daughters laugh so much. One evening he found Isabella in the kitchen long after the twins had gone to bed, humming softly while washing dishes. "You don't have to clean," he said from the doorway, startling her. "That's not part of your job." Isabella turned, surprised to see him. In all the weeks she had worked there he had barely spoken more than a few words to her. "I don't mind," she said. "It relaxes me. Cooking and cleaning, it reminds me of home." "Where is home?" "It was a restaurant," Isabella said, her voice softening with sadness. "My parents' restaurant. I'm trying to save enough money to bring it back to life." Dante studied her for a long moment. There was something honest about her, something he was not used to seeing in the world he lived in, where everyone wanted something and hid their true reasons. "My daughters seem happy," he said finally. It was the closest thing to a thank you he knew how to give. They are wonderful girls, Isabella said, meaning every word. They just needed someone to remind them that they are loved. Something flickered in Dante's eyes, something old and painful. He nodded once and walked away without another word. But that night, for the first time in 2 years, he slept without the crushing weight on his chest that usually kept him awake until dawn. Months passed. Then a year. Isabella became part of the rhythm of the house. She knew which cabinet held the twins' favorite cups. She knew Luna hated peas but loved carrots, and Rosa was exactly the opposite. She knew Dante liked his coffee black with no sugar, and that he worked too late into the night, and that sometimes she left a plate of food outside his office door because she noticed he forgot to eat. She never asked about his work. She had heard the whispers, seen the serious men who came and went from the house, felt the tension that sometimes filled the air like electricity before a storm. But inside those walls with the twins, Dante was simply a tired father trying his best. The twins began calling her Mommy by accident one day, and then it never stopped. It happened during a school event when a teacher asked Rosa, "Is this your mommy?" And Rosa, without even thinking, said, "Yes." Isabella's heart nearly stopped. She looked down at Rosa, unsure what to say, afraid of correcting her, afraid of not correcting her. That night she sat the twins down gently. "Girls, I love you both so much. But I want to be honest with you. I'm not your mommy. Your mommy was a very special woman who loved you before you were even born." Luna's lip trembled. "But you take care of us like a mommy. You cook like a mommy. You hug us like a mommy." "That's because I love you like a mommy," Isabella said, her own eyes filling with tears. "But there is only one mommy, and she is always in your hearts, even though she's not here." Rosa crawled into Isabella's lap. "Can we still call you mommy? Even if you're not really her?" Isabella did not have the heart to say no. She kissed the top of Rosa's head and whispered, "If it makes you feel safe, you can call me whatever makes your heart happy." She did not tell Dante about this conversation. She was afraid of how he might react. Afraid he might think she was trying to replace the woman he had loved and lost. She did not know that Dante already knew. Mr. Reynolds had told him weeks before. And instead of anger, Dante had felt something he could not explain. A strange mixture of grief and gratitude, sadness and warmth, all tangled together in his chest. The dinner that changed everything happened on a quiet Tuesday evening, exactly 1 year and 8 months into Isabella's contract. Isabella had found an old, stained recipe card tucked inside a cookbook in the back of a kitchen drawer while cleaning. The handwriting was elegant and slightly faded. It was a recipe for a chicken dish with lemon, rosemary, and roasted potatoes, along with a small handwritten note in the corner. Asterisk, Dante's favorite. Make with love. Asterisk. He had no idea whose handwriting it was. She decided to surprise the family with it that night, thinking it might be a nice change from her usual meals. When the food was placed on the table, Dante walked in from his office, tired from a long day, ready to eat quickly and return to his work. But the moment the smell reached him, he stopped completely in the doorway. Lemon. Rosemary. That specific, unmistakable smell. "Where did you learn to make this?" His voice was strange, tight. Isabella looked up, confused by his expression. "I found an old recipe card in the kitchen drawer. I thought it might be nice to try something new. Is something wrong?" Dante slowly sat down at the table. His hands that had never trembled in front of dangerous men, were shaking as he picked up his fork. He took one bite. And the mansion, for a moment, disappeared around him. He was back in their small first apartment, before the money, before the danger, before everything became complicated. Maria stood at their tiny stove, laughing at something he had said, wearing his old shirt as an apron, cooking this exact dish because it was the only recipe she really knew how to make well. "One day I'll be a real cook," she used to tease him. Asterisk. "Until then you get lemon chicken every Tuesday whether you like it or not." "Sis. I love it every Tuesday," he used to say back, kissing her forehead. Dante's fork fell onto his plate with a loud clatter. The twins froze. Isabella stood up quickly, alarmed. "Dante, are you all right?" He put his head in his hands and his shoulders began to shake. The most feared man in the city, a man who had never shown weakness in front of anyone, sat at his dinner table and cried. "That was her recipe," he choked out. "That was Maria's recipe. She made this every Tuesday. I haven't tasted it since she died. I couldn't even look at a lemon without feeling sick, so I never touched it again." Isabella's hand flew to her mouth. Dante, I am so sorry, I didn't know, I would never have. Don't apologize, he said, lifting his head, tears streaming freely down his face in front of his daughters for the very first time. Don't you dare apologize. Luna, seeing her father cry for the first time in her memory, climbed off her chair and wrapped her small arms around him. Rosa followed, crying too, though she did not fully understand why. I miss her too, Daddy, Luna whispered. Dante pulled both girls close, holding them tightly, sobbing quietly into their hair. Isabella stood back, giving them space, her own eyes filled with tears, feeling like an outsider looking into a private moment of grief. But then Dante looked up at her and his eyes told her something different. Thank you, he whispered, for bringing her back to this table even for a moment. Thank you for giving my girls a mother's love again. That night changed something between them, something neither one said out loud, but both of them felt. After that night, Dante began joining them for dinner every evening instead of eating alone in his office. He began asking Isabella about her day, about her restaurant, about her parents. He began to laugh again, quiet at first, then more freely. Isabella found herself looking forward to those evenings more than she wanted to admit. She told herself it was simply friendship, simply comfort between two people who understood loss. She reminded herself again and again of the promise she had made to herself and to Dante on her very first day. I need you to understand something, she had told him back then, standing in his office with her resume in her hand. I am taking this job to save my parents' restaurant. When my 2 years are finished, I will be leaving to rebuild it. I don't want there to be any confusion about that. Dante had simply nodded at the time, thinking it did not matter, thinking 2 years was a long time away. Now, with only 4 months left on the contract, it did not feel like a long time at all. It felt like it was ending far too soon. You still plan to leave, Dante said one evening, not a question but a statement, as they sat outside on the porch after the twins had gone to sleep. Isabella's heart tightened. I have to, Dante. It was never supposed to be permanent. I have a promise to keep to my parents. And what about the promise the girls think you made to them? His voice was quiet, careful, but there was pain underneath it. They call you Mommy. They believe you will always be here. I know, Isabella whispered, her voice breaking. I have thought about it every single day. But this job, it was never meant to be my whole life. It was meant to help me rebuild what I lost. Dante looked out at the dark garden, his jaw tight. And what if what you have found here is worth more than what you lost? Isabella did not have an answer for that. She was too afraid to admit, even to herself, what those words made her feel. The final weeks passed like sand slipping through fingers, impossible to hold on to no matter how tightly she tried. Isabella began preparing the twins gently, explaining again and again that she would always love them, that leaving did not mean she was abandoning them, that sometimes grown-ups have to keep old promises even when new ones feel more important. The twins did not understand. How could they? They were only 6 years old now, and all they knew was that the only mother they remembered was about to disappear from their lives, just like the first one had. You're leaving like Mommy left, Rosa said one night, tears streaming down her small face. Everyone leaves us. Your mommy didn't want to leave you, sweetheart, Isabella said, holding her close, her heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. And I don't want to leave you either. But I made a promise a long time ago, before I even knew you, and I have to keep it. Promises can change, Luna said stubbornly, refusing to cry, trying to be strong the way she always tried to be. You can make a new promise. A promise to stay. Isabella did not know how to explain to a 6-year-old that her heart was being torn in 2 different directions, that every single day she spent in that house made leaving harder, that she had started to dream not of a restaurant, but of a family, of this family, of these 2 little girls and their broken, healing father. She did not know that Dante was standing in the hallway, listening to every word, his own heart shattering along with hers. On the final day of the contract, the mansion was silent in a way it had never been before, not even in the darkest days after Maria's death. It was the silence of something ending, heavy and unbearable. Isabella stood in Dante's office with the final papers in front of her, the papers that officially ended her employment, the papers that would release the final payment, allowing her to rebuild Bella's kitchen at last. Her hand trembled as she picked up the pen. Dante stood by the window, his back to her, unable to watch. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I do, Isabella whispered, though her voice cracked on the words. I made a promise, Dante. To my parents. I have to keep it. And what about the promise you made to my daughters? His voice was raw now, no longer hiding the pain. What about the promise you made to me without ever saying the words? Isabella's tears fell onto the paper, blurring the ink. I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to fall. She stopped herself. Dante turned around slowly. To fall what, Isabella? She could not finish the sentence. She simply signed the paper with a shaking hand, the tears falling freely now, and placed the pen down. It's done, she whispered. Dante's face was a mask of controlled pain, the same mask he wore in front of dangerous men, the same mask that hid every emotion. But his eyes betrayed him completely. Then I suppose there is nothing left to say, he said quietly, though every word cost him something enormous. He was lying. There was everything left to say. But he could not find the strength to say it. The twins found out an hour later when they saw Isabella's small suitcase by the front door. No, Luna said immediately, running toward the suitcase as if she could physically stop what was happening by standing in front of it. No, no, no. Luna, sweetheart, Isabella began, kneeling down. You promised you weren't like the other nannies. Luna screamed, tears streaming down her face, her small body shaking with anger and grief. You lied to us. You lied. I never lied, Isabella said, her own voice breaking completely now. I love you both so much. This is the hardest thing I have ever had to do. Rosa simply stood frozen, tears silently falling, too heartbroken to even speak. Mr. Reynolds, watching from nearby, felt his own eyes fill with tears. In all his years working in that house, he had never witnessed anything as painful as this moment. Isabella hugged both girls tightly, memorizing the feeling of their small arms around her, knowing this might be the last time she ever held them. I love you, she whispered into their hair. I love you both more than you will ever know. Please don't ever forget that. Then, because staying any longer would break her completely, she stood up, picked up her suitcase and walked toward the door. Dante stood at the top of the staircase, watching, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, saying nothing, though everything inside him was screaming. The mansion gates were tall and iron, and they had always felt like a boundary between two worlds, the dangerous world Dante controlled outside, and the fragile peace he had built inside for his daughters. Isabella walked toward those gates now, each step feeling heavier than the last, her suitcase dragging behind her like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Behind her she heard footsteps running, small feet slapping against the stone path. Please don't go. She turned around to see Luna and Rosa running toward her, tears streaming down their faces, having escaped from Mr. Reynolds' attempt to hold them back. Please don't go. Luna screamed again, reaching her first, grabbing onto Isabella's leg with all her strength. You're our mommy. You're our mommy, please don't go. Rosa arrived seconds later, wrapping her small arms around Isabella's waist, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Please, mommy, please don't leave us. Please. Isabella sank to her knees, unable to stand any longer, holding both girls tightly, her own sobs mixing with theirs, the three of them a tangled knot of grief and love in the middle of the driveway. I don't want to go, Isabella whispered, the truth finally breaking free from where she had buried it for months. I don't want to go. I don't want to go. That was when she heard him. Footsteps, slower, heavier, deliberate, coming down the path. Dante Moretti, a man who commanded fear from powerful men across the entire city, walked toward the gates with tears streaming openly down his face, not caring who saw, not caring what it meant for his reputation, caring only about the woman kneeling in his driveway with his daughters wrapped around her. Close the gates, he said to the guard standing nearby, his voice thick with emotion but absolutely certain. Close them. She isn't leaving. The guard, stunned, hesitated only a second before obeying, and the heavy iron gates slowly swung shut with a deep final sound. Isabella looked up at Dante through her tears, confused, her heart pounding. Dante, what are you? He knelt down in front of her, right there in the driveway, ignoring the dirt on his expensive suit, ignoring everything except her. I have watched you save my daughters, he said, his voice breaking with every word. I have watched you bring life back into this house when I thought it was gone forever. I have fallen in love with you every single day for the past 2 years, and I was too much of a coward to say it until this very moment, when I almost lost you. Isabella's breath caught in her throat. You're staying, Dante said, taking her face gently in his hands. Not because of a contract. Not only because of the children. You're staying because this is your home. Because we are your family. Because I cannot imagine one single day of my life without you in it. Luna and Rosa, still holding on to Isabella, looked up with wide, hopeful eyes. Please say yes, Rosa whispered. Please, Mommy. Isabella looked at Dante, then at the two little girls who had become her whole world, then back at Dante again, and for the first time in 2 years she realized something powerful. She was not dreaming of a restaurant anymore. She was not dreaming of anywhere else in the entire world. Everything she had ever wanted was right there in front of her, kneeling in the dirt of a mansion driveway, holding her face like she was the most precious thing he had ever touched. Yes, she whispered, and then louder through her tears, yes, I'm staying. I'm staying. Dante pulled her into his arms, and the twins wrapped around them both, and for the first time since Maria had died, the entire family held each other in a circle of tears that finally, meant nothing but joy. Months later, the mansion that had once felt like a cold, silent tomb was filled with white flowers and soft music. Isabella walked down a garden aisle in a simple, beautiful dress, her hands trembling not from fear this time but from happiness. Dante stood waiting for her, wearing a smile that had once been rare but now appeared every single day, dressed in a suit that fit him like armor made of love instead of fear. Luna and Rosa walked ahead of her as flower girls, scattering white petals along the path, both of them grinning so wide it looked like their faces might break from happiness. The ceremony was small, filled only with people who mattered, filled with quiet tears for those who could not be there to see it, Isabella's parents and Maria, whose photograph sat in a place of honor near the altar, as if she too had come to witness her daughters finally having a mother's love again. When the priest finally said the words that made it official, Dante did not wait politely. He pulled Isabella close and kissed her like a man who had learned, the hardest way possible, never to take love for granted again. Later that evening, during the reception, as the guests danced and laughed under strings of soft lights, Isabella found herself standing beside Dante near the garden where, months ago, gates had closed to keep her from leaving forever. She looked up at him, her new husband, the man who had once been described to her only as a name that made people afraid. Are you happy? She asked softly, resting her head against his shoulder. Dante looked down at her, then out at his daughters dancing together nearby, laughing without a single trace of the fear or grief that had once defined their small lives. He smiled, a real smile, the kind that reached all the way to his eyes. For the first time in years, he said quietly, I finally have nothing left to hide. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please subscribe, hit that like button, and tell me in the comments what you learned from this story. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. See you in the next video. ****